On social media, older people maybe don't spend as much time on the platform as younger people do. So that's something to think about. But if you're just thinking about, impressions, where do you find people who are in that prime spending of their lives? They are still on Facebook.
Hey gang, it's Thursday, December 2nd. Debbie and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, an e-marketer podcast made possible by Basis Technologies. I'm Marcus, and today I'm joined by our principal analyst leading our social media and international coverage. It's Deborah Aho-Williamson.
Hey, Marcus.
Hey, Debbie. Thanks for hanging out. Today's fact: bears don't hibernate. So contrary to common belief, bears do not hibernate. While bears do slow down during the winter, they are not true hibernators like woodchucks or other creatures. Instead, bears enter what is called a torpor. When animals hibernate, they sleep through the entire winter and don't wake up when they hear loud noises or even if they are moved or touched. In contrast, a bear in torpor, I'm saying that wrong for sure, can wake up fairly quickly at a noise or a touch.
I did not know this.
I still think you shouldn't touch one. Just in case you're like, is it really asleep? Still don't touch it, but just it will wake up and kill you immediately. But yeah, they don't hibernate, apparently.
I guess that's where that saying goes, don't poke a sleeping bear, right? Because they can wake up.
Oh, there we go. They will wake up in a heartbeat. Yep, and rip you to pieces. I always wondered if I always thought it'd be nice to hibernate. But then can you imagine, it's already bad enough when you wake up after 10 hours. Can you imagine waking up after 6 months? Your muscles just wasted away. You're just exhausted still. Yeah, I don't want that. Anyway, today's real topic. How bad is Facebook's young person problem? Is Facebook losing its touch with the current youth? Signs point to most definitely yes, writes Aruj Ahmed of Digital Information World. She notes that researchers and analysts keep concluding that Facebook is losing its touch with the younger generation. Heck, the company even projects that teen usage will drop by another 45% over the next 2 years, according to internal documents, after already falling by 13% in 2019. The age group just above the teenage people, 20 to 30-year-old users, are expected to fall in the coming years as well by about 4%. Also, Debbie's self-reported daily usage on Facebook among Gen Z adults has slipped from 44% in December 2017 to 38% today, according to Morning Consult brand Intelligence. Debbie, looking at some of these numbers that we now have from Facebook and obviously some of our own numbers that we use to track Facebook and other social platforms, how bad is Facebook's young person problem? Yeah,
it is bad, but it's also not new. And I think
it's been bad. Exactly.
It's been bad. And we've written about that. Our forecasters have been saying for some time that Facebook is losing teens and young adults. And this is contributing overall to Facebook's, in some countries, declines in growth. And what is interesting is that now Facebook is saying it, or at least they were saying it, internally, but not publicly, but now it's public. So that, I think, gives it a lot more, gravity because, what do forecasters know? I'm joking. Our forecasters know a lot, but they were right. Let's put it that way. They were most definitely right. And now we know because of Facebook's internal documents.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's been falling for a while. Our own numbers suggesting that as well. So the share of 12 to 17-year-olds on Facebook's been falling since 2015. It peaked at 63%, and then today is 37%. The share of 12 to 17-year-olds. Go one age group above, the share of 18 to 24-year-olds using Facebook peaked in 2014, so a year before the teens, at 90%, and today is 63%. And then, as you mentioned, we've got internal numbers now, according to Frances Haugen, who's the whistleblower, according to her filing with the SEC that shows Facebook's teen and young adult user bases in the US have shrunk since 2012. Bloomberg noting that one. Debbie, also the time that they're spending on the platform also going down. Data from March 2021 internal Facebook report shows that teens are spending less time on the Blue app and posting less. 13 to 17-year-olds time fell from 31 minutes a day to 26. from 2020 to 2021. For 18 to 19-year-olds, it fell from 47 minutes to 44, and also the number of messages people send falling from 17 to 14 per day for teens. So not only are less young people using the platform, but it seems like they're using it less as well.
Absolutely. And not only in the US, but in other countries. So our updated forecasts for the US, show the trends that you highlighted, and that's leading to growth of just 0.6% in total users in the US this year. But we're also seeing this in the UK. We've lowered our forecasts for UK users as a result of declines in the 12 to 17 age group. And this is happening again in Canada as well. The percentage of internet users using Facebook is slated to drop in Canada for the first time this year, largely due to declines in the number of younger users. So, yeah, the US is definitely not an outlier. This is happening in multiple countries. And it's increasingly, I think, going to impact their worldwide growth. I mean, right now we're still seeing growth, strong growth in the Middle East and Africa and APAC. But, even in those markets, things are going to start slowing down in the next couple of years. And I think whatever trend is happening among young people in places like the US and Canada and the UK is increasingly going to be seen outside of those countries as well. Yeah,
the share of people who use Facebook, internet users who use Facebook in America, 61%, 60.8 to be exact, ticking down to 60.7, so flat basically. But when you look under the hood, young people, less and less of them using it, 37% of 12 to 17-year-olds, that goes down by a point each of the next couple of years, and then the 18 to 24-year-olds as well, going down from this year from 63% down a point each of the next couple of years. Then you've got that kind of 25 to 44 age category, that's pretty much flat. There's over 80% of people in that age category, 25 to 44, just using it, the same number of people using it today as we'll do in the future. And then you've got Facebook adding people, right, Debbie, in the over 44 category. So even though teens are going down, the older folks are keeping Facebook afloat, if you will. If you're talking about 61% of internet users in America using the platform, young people leaving, older people coming to the platform, and that keeps them around that 61%. Esther Kezia-Thorpe reminds us in a What's New in Publishing article that the marketing industry is totally obsessed with young people. And whilst it's prudent to keep a pipeline of youngsters interested in your product, this is taken to absurd extremes in the industry, with millions of dollars spent trying to understand, quote unquote, the digital habits of generations barely out of diapers, with brands trying their hardest to tap into the spending power, quote unquote, of kids who will still be getting pocket money for the next 10 years. Do you think advertisers have too much of a focus on the number of people who are, quote unquote, fleeing Facebook? And maybe if you flip it, you should be looking at this as Facebook sitting on an older person who have money, goldmine. I think that's a really interesting way of putting it. But again, I mean, I think back to my early days of writing about social media, back when Facebook was, a toddler itself. One of the main reasons why social media took off and Facebook took off is because of young people and because of their usage patterns. And it always makes sense, I think, based on my years of researching social media, to watch where young people are going and what they're doing in social media. If they're not using Facebook, what are they using? Increasingly, they are on Snapchat and TikTok. They're watching videos. They're engaging in private and small group messaging. And they are very, very engaged on both of those platforms. So for me, I think it really comes down to understanding where the young people are. And that's why advertisers are paying attention, because they're not looking so much at today and what's happening today, but they're thinking 5-10 years from now, how am I going to reach these people? And how am I going to engage them? How am I going to get them to buy my product? So young people, I can understand the fascination with young people, but especially with social media, I mean, you really have to follow those usage patterns closely. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, I think, you did pose a really interesting question about, is this an older person gold mine? And there is something to be said for that because, according to our estimates, about 60% of Facebook's users in the US are ages 35 and up this year. And that's up 5 percentage points compared to 2018. Wow.
So yes, and this is definitely a demographic that does have a spending power. They're likely to be parents. They have houses that they're buying, cars, feeding, young people most likely. Mm-hmm. So I do think from a perspective of if you're an advertiser trying to reach that market, then certainly a platform like Facebook does continue to make sense, and it makes a lot of sense. It's a bit like on TV, where older people spend significantly more time with TV than younger people do. On social media, older people maybe don't spend as much time on the platform as younger people do. So that's something to think about. But if you're just thinking about, impressions, where do you find people who are in that prime spending of their lives? They are still on Facebook. So I think the way you put it, it was really a valid point and something that advertisers should keep in mind.
Yeah. You mentioned some of our numbers in terms of how many people are on Facebook who are older. Nearly 40% of Facebook users in the US, 45 and older, according to their numbers, January 2021, nearly 40% of Facebook users in the US are over 45. Ms. Thorpe notes that buying power of people over 50 never been stronger, and this age group are the wealthiest age cohort in the world. However, Debbie, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg recently said, we're retooling our teams to make serving young adults our North Star rather than optimizing for the larger number of older people. They'll be putting an increased focus on Reels, their TikTok-esque feature, to attract more users in the coveted 18 to 29 demographic, whilst acknowledging that this shift will take years, not months. Debbie, Ms. Thorpe writes that there's no harm in dedicating a portion of your resources to chasing the next big thing for teens if they accept it will be a separate product. But trying to replicate the features of popular apps like TikTok and Snapchat isn't going to bring young people flocking back. They want a space of their own. In your opinion, are Facebook's efforts at trying to bring young people back to Facebook a bit misguided or futile, perhaps?
I think in a large way, yes. So I think the ship honestly has sailed for Facebook when it comes to young people. Where I think there could be something, and there's really not enough research to know if this is true or not. So this is really mostly my speculation. Facebook, in addition to talking about wanting to reach younger users, has also been talking quite a lot about this thing called the Metaverse, right? This sort of nebulous virtual / augmented reality place where we can interact and engage. And to the extent that Facebook can possibly come up with some sort of a concept of a metaverse that would be appealing to young people, maybe that will bring them back. But first of all, it's going to take years. Second of all, there's no indication that Facebook is necessarily going to, be the winner in the race to the metaverse. And third of all, what teens and young adults want is so fleeting. And who knows? I mean, can Facebook come up with something like this and win back the young people? It's possible. But the current Facebook platform, I don't think, is where young people are going to flock. It's got to be something different. And that's where I think it's going to happen, if it happens.
Right, if it happens at all. I mean, it's just not the platform talking about the ship has sailed, it's just not the platform that they're heading to. And Piper Sandler had some numbers, spring 2021 to fall 2021. So from spring to fall, over those 6 months, US teens' favorite social network, Snapchat, 31% in the spring, 35, so up 4 points, 35% in the fall. TikTok, 30 to 30, so flat. Instagram, 24 to 22, so going down a little bit, but still in third place. Discord was in fourth place in front of Facebook, 5%. 5%. Facebook went from 3% in the spring to 2% in the fall. So it's way, way behind, actually tied with Twitter and Pinterest in terms of US teens' favorite social network. Then, Debbie, you've also got the Facebook nevers. You've got the people not just who left, but the people who will never use Facebook, never sign up to Facebook in the first place. It seems to be that Facebook has, Bloomberg was pointing to one early 2021 internal report that Facebook acknowledging that they have a young adult sharing problem. And that's a big part of this is young people are choosing other apps to share day-to-day and life moments. So content-wise, that's one of their issues. Debbie, in March of this year, some Facebook data scientists presented Chris Cox, who's Facebook's chief product officer, with health scorecards that noted most young adults perceive Facebook as a place for people in their 40s and 50s. They view the content as boring, misleading, and negative, often having to get past irrelevant content to get to what matters. It added that they have a wide range of negative associations with Facebook, including privacy concerns, impact to their well-being, along with low awareness of relevant services. If you had to point to one over the other, do you think that all of this is more of a Facebook problem in terms of young people or more of TikTok's success?
It's really about the changing usage patterns. Again, I really feel like, platforms like TikTok, video is so important, but not just the video on TikTok, but the way that the videos are constructed and the messages that they get across through smart editing and use of music and challenges. It's really sort of it's unique now in the way that Facebook was unique and compelling, back when teens and young adults really heavily used Facebook. So that just speaks to what I said earlier about how, what teens and young adults gravitate toward is always changing. And Snapchat's going to continue to remain important because I think of the private and small group messaging. TikTok, again, because of the videos. We haven't talked too much about Instagram. Instagram is still important to teens. It's definitely a place where they're sharing stories, so private stories or their public stories. They are browsing influencer content. It may not be their favorite or their most important platform, but certainly Instagram has popularity among teens as well. So ultimately, I guess the only other thing I would say about Facebook that in its favor, I guess you would say, for teens and young adults is that when it comes to groups, so for example, high school sports teams or, your local soccer team or college class of, 2020, whatever, those types of groups still continue to get made and are very active on Facebook. So that's one place where I think teens are still, begrudgingly using Facebook is when, something that they are involved in has a group there and they have no choice but to use Facebook to keep up with whatever that group is doing.
It's 100% true, and some of their own internal research pointing to that. Part of that young adults and teens report prepared for Mr. Cox last March showed that Facebook wasn't offering young people a clear reason to use the platform. In the recent study, Facebook asked young adults which apps they use for 12 different activities across video, commerce, news, entertainment, etc. Facebook was the top choice for just one category, getting local information or connecting with people in your area. So absolutely spot on. Debbie, in terms of Instagram, just to look at some of the numbers, because Instagram's seen as the savior for Facebook in terms of, people moving from Facebook over to Instagram, so it's okay. We mentioned that according to Piper Sandler, Instagram's actually in third place with teens behind Snapchat and TikTok, and the gap is widening there. In terms of our own numbers, we have the 12 to 17-year-olds in the US, 58% of them using Instagram, and that number's pretty much flat. It will tick up to 59%, but that's where it will live. It's not going down, though, in Instagram's defense. That's all we've got time for the lead story. It's time now for the halftime report. Debbie, one or two takeaways from the first half?
Well, Facebook is losing young people, just as we had predicted, but now also true based on internal documents. And that is an issue because when it comes to social media, where young people are spending time is what you need to pay attention to, what advertisers need to pay attention to. And those platforms are currently Snapchat and TikTok.
Yeah, excellent. As we should mention, though, Facebook, 61% of people, internet users in America using that today. It'll be 61% in 4 years' time. There's just variation between the ages. Instagram, 41% of people using that today in the US, growing to 44%. But as we said, those are aging populations for both Facebook and Instagram. So we've got time for the lead story. Time now for In Other News. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, Basis Technologies. Today's podcast is made possible by Basis Technologies. Basis Technologies has created a digital advertising platform that connects people, automates processes, and unifies channels, bringing together programmatic, site direct, search, social, and CTV into one single interface. And through the power of automation, Basis enable brands, agencies, and publishers to build and operate a healthy, secure, efficient, and profitable advertising organization. Ready to take control of your advertising? Just go to basis.net today. That's www.basis.net. Basis Technologies, the future of advertising has arrived. All right, folks, we are back today in other news. Twitter's CEO Jack Dorsey is stepping down, and more evidence to suggest young people prefer TikTok to Instagram. Story 1. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey is stepping down, ending his second stint at the company, which started back in 2015 after being pushed out in 2008. He will be replaced by CTO Parag Agrawal, who has been with the company for over a decade, noted CNBC on Monday morning. Reuters sources say Dorsey is stepping down now because he feels confident about his successor and will focus on his payments processing firm Square and other pursuits like philanthropy. The company's board has supposedly been preparing for Dorsey's departure since last year. Debbie, your initial reaction?
Yeah, it is an interesting one. I mean, Dorsey has been so integral to what Twitter is. I mean, literally since it was founded, he's been there and he's been the face of the company in many ways. So it's a big deal. But at the same time, Twitter is really, they're at a pivotal point in their business model. The advertising world it's facing challenges with targeting and privacy, and Twitter is increasingly experimenting with new revenue streams, to augment its ad business. Things like supporting subscriptions and influencer-driven compensation and things like that. And so it's created some really aggressive revenue goals. And Jack Dorsey, I feel like someone who is a business, strong business background, and not that Jack doesn't, but who really can understand the ad model and push these things forward for Twitter, is going to be able to be the most successful. And Jack has been controversial at some points. So overall, I think it remains to be seen, if the new CEO can make good on Twitter's aggressive plans. But it's going to be an interesting move because, again, Jack's been the face of this company for quite a long time. And even down to his facial hair. People have very much commented over the years about, his face as the face of the company as well.
It's become iconic. So I just started watching the Harry Potter movies, and he's got a Dumbledore beard. And I wonder if that's what he's going for, but he's, who copied who? You mentioned their aggressive revenue goals. Running Twitter over the next few years is going to be a very tough job. Twitter has very aggressive internal goals. The company aims to have over 300 million monetizable daily active users, what they count by the end of 2023. That's just 2 years. It's closer to 200 million at the moment. And at least they want to double their annual revenue in that year as well. So they kind of set these insane goals and then said, good luck, Parag. You're on your own. The stock jumped a little bit after this announcement of Mr. Dorsey stepping down. He has been running 2 companies that have revenues of billions of dollars at the same time. So I think the market at least sees this as a good thing for Twitter because they'll have a CEO who can focus exclusively on Twitter and not split their time between Square and Twitter. Story 2. Young people aged 12 to 17 prefer TikTok to Instagram, according to a recent Forrester survey of over 4,000 folks. That's apparently because they find TikTok to be a friendlier and more wholesome place that exposes them to a much more positive environment. Last year, more teens preferred Instagram and Snapchat to TikTok, but this year, TikTok sits on top, followed by Instagram in second and Snapchat in third. Debbie, what do you make of this research?
Yeah, again, some of it backs up what we've been saying, and it certainly backs up some of the things we've been talking about in the first part of this podcast. There are a couple of differences. Our forecasts focus on monthly usage, so we estimate things are slightly different among teens than this particular survey has. So we estimate that Snapchat is the most popular platform with 67.4% of US teens using it monthly, followed by TikTok with 61.1%, and then Instagram in third with 57.1% of teens using it this year on a monthly basis. So the order's different, but certainly I think no one can dispute that TikTok has taken a bite out of Instagram. It's taken a bite out of Facebook. It's probably taking somewhat of a bite out of Snapchat, at least not monthly, but perhaps in time spent among teens. So, it's definitely, the one to watch for sure among the young people, no question.
And I believe, Debbie, so you said we've got Snapchat then TikTok, then Instagram. I believe TikTok's the only one that's really gaining as well as really growing much over the next couple of years. The other two, Snapchat and Instagram, are pretty flat in terms of their share of 12 to 17-year-olds.
I believe that's right. And again, TikTok's new, right? So it's still got some growth ahead of it. And I mean, ultimately, I think that will plateau as well. But it's still kind of on that upward trend that a new platform has in the early days.
Absolutely. That is all we have time for. Thank you, Debbie, for hanging out.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you to Victoria. She edits the show. Thanks to everyone listening in. We'll see you tomorrow, hopefully, for the Behind the Numbers weekly listen, the eMarketer podcast made possible by Basis Technologies.